FSR 3, the competitor to DLSS 3, has released yesterday for Forspoken and Immortals of Avium. So obviously I had to try it out. Frame interpolation game sounds very interesting to me. So I downloaded Forspoken Steam once again, as it was updated alongside the main game, and I got to test it a little. And my first impression was not very good. Yes, the frame rate doubled, but it barely felt smoother. After messing around and googling a bit, I learned that this thing had to be on, contrary to DLSS, which requires to be off instead. So after that, I wanted to see if the game was actually as smooth as it would be if it ran natively at the same frame rate. And it was clear that no, it doesn't. Running the game natively at 7 FPS is smoother than the game running at 90 FPS with FrameGen, and I didn't take latency into account. But despite that, it is still smoother than the base 45 FPS it is interpolating from. Here, the game is running at a similar frame rate. Left is running at about 90 FPS, while right is about 70, and yet right is quite a bit smoother. I did slow down the footage, making the difference even more obvious, but it is still quite noticeable in real time. Next, I tried to hunt for some artifacts and other errors, and this is where FSR 3 really impressed me. Yes, the generated frames are not perfect, but it is very hard, even going frame by frame, to spot anything wrong. There are some artifacts around the character moving the camera quickly, and those are pretty much the worst you'll see, at least in a demo. Going frame by frame, I did find frames like this, but as long as your frame rate is higher than 120, it's pretty much unnoticeable. It is sort of visible at the bottom of the screen looking at the character's legs, but it's pretty hard to see. How it becomes visible is with a low frame rate. Here, the game is running at about 20 to 30 FPS, and FrameGen makes it pretty much unplayable, with every frame looking wrong. And then finally, there is latency. Without measuring it, it was noticeable but usable. I did try to measure it with NVIDIA FrameView, but it can't really log the PC latency in this game. I did see a jump of 5 milliseconds in render latency, but on its own, it's not really a great metric. So, overall, I think FrameGen is pretty cool, and if it didn't require TIA or FSR on, I'd probably use it in some games. It does require a decent base frame rate, I would say about 40 FPS minimum to be usable, but if you can deal with TIA, you'll probably have no problem with this.